What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video today. I want to talk a little bit about Chris Ballard again, and he just had a press conference with the media, and I thought that some of the things in there were interesting leading up to the draft, kind of talking about free agency and the draft. So figured go over it with you guys in case you hadn't seen that or hadn't heard about it. And what I want to start with here first is defense, and where he was talking about free agency and was asked about free agency and pretty much said exactly what we already know about Chris Ballard, about how he doesn't like to spin, and we call him Bargain Bin Ballard. Well, he had mentioned, like, if you're trying to build your team through free agency, then you're going to end up overpaying a lot. That's an expensive way to build a team, is doing it through free agency. So he mentioned how building a team through the draft is what you really want to be able to do and build a team where you have guys coming into the league and being able to not even being, Pro Bowl, all pro kind of impact, but coming in and just making an impact on the team in some way on offense, defense, or special teams. So building the team through the draft, that's what Chris Ballard is trying to do. That's why he went out and, like, he spent big money this offseason. He spent a lot of money this offseason, and all of it was basically for players that were already on the Colts. Now, bringing in Joe Flacco is a big deal. Bringing in Raekwon Davis, I think, is going to be very helpful to that defensive front. So, all in all, like, not the worst offseason by Chris Ballard in terms of free agency. Re-signed a lot of really good players. They just happen to all be Colts and guys that he had drafted. Guys, he's building his team, yes, through free agency, but it's his own free agents, guys that he drafted, and then going back. This is going to be, the least amount of draft picks that Chris Ballard has had. Now, talking about that, he also mentioned that it's more probable that they trade back in this draft than they were to trade up. He said that somebody would have to be uniquely talented and have a unique skill set in order for them to trade up and go get a guy, which could be Malik Neighbors. We had that conversation. More talk has come out about that conversation and how the Colts could definitely be in the market to trade up. And knowing Chris Ballard, like, he's the kind of guy that's going to come out and tell everybody there's a better chance we trade back, just because, it could bring leverage back to him, right? There's less leverage for Chris Ballard in terms of a trade if everybody already knows that he's trying to trade up come draft night. If he comes out publicly and says, well, there's a better chance we trade back, then a little bit of that leverage comes back, right? Trying to balance it out. That seems like a Chris Ballard move. He doesn't like things getting out of the building. And if it does, I could see him putting stuff in the media to try to say the exact opposite. So who knows what's going to happen. I think it was interesting where he said that they had somewhere between 19 and 21 first round grades. So in terms of trading back, like, you would have to have, a certain number of guys that didn't have first round grades get drafted above where the Colts are trying to trade back to. Now, we've talked about them trading back, right? And where's that number, right? A lot of people have the Eagles drafting Cooper DeJean with the 22nd overall pick. And that's somebody that a lot of Colts fans have talked about, like, hey, let's just trade back into the early 20s and get Cooper DeJean. If he doesn't make it past 22, then you're going to trade back from 15 to 20, 15 to 21. You're not going to get a whole lot back in return. Is it worth trading back for in that instance, right? And if you trade back, you don't want to trade back too far and lose out on the player that you were hoping to get. Now, do the Colts have a first round grade for Cooper DeJean? That's the interesting thing here. But I just think they have 19 to 21 first round grades. So in my opinion, I feel like, just deducing from that, there's probably a better chance the Colts just stay at 15 or they trade up. So who knows what the Colts will decide to do. I know from the offensive standpoint, to kind of piggyback off that conversation, talking about offense and what he was talking about with the offense, that he said that the offense is going to dominate the early portion of this draft. Early on, there's going to be a lot of offensive players. He talked about how the offensive line and the receivers are very deep in this draft and how there's a lot of talent at both positions in this draft. So I think that's important for the second, third, and fourth rounds for the Colts, and paying attention to what he's going to be doing there. Seems like, even though we think the Colts need to go defense in this draft at different positions, it sure seems like the Colts could end up going offense and going, building around Anthony Richardson since there's so much talent on the offensive side in this draft, getting a lot of really young players on the offensive side, start putting around Anthony Richardson. You already have Pittman Jr. as, the vet, Jonathan Taylor at this point, the vet, but you just went and got Josh Downs last year. So getting more people to build around Anthony Richardson seems like the thing that could take place, at least from what Chris Ballard was talking about. Now, that could also mean kind of what he was talking about. Maybe they do go if either Kenyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold is available at 15. Maybe that's the pick. Maybe Brian Thomas Jr. is the pick at 15. If they stay put, maybe those are the guys. If they have first round grades for those guys, excuse me, then that could be the pick at 15. So then if you go past that, then what could they do? You start looking at, kind of what Chris Ballard was talking about. What do the Colts need? I feel like defense could be that first pick, and try to get a next level defense, first round graded defensive guy with that first round pick, and then go offense for a few rounds after that, right? We've talked about different guys, different wide receivers that you could take in that second round, or maybe you trade up into the back end of the first round to get a wide receiver like Xavier Worthy, right? There are options for the Colts, especially at that wide receiver. That seems like a position that Chris Ballard and his guys are certainly looking into upgrading. They've talked about being more explosive and getting more explosivity and being able to have that element of the offense. So at some point, Colts are looking for wide receiver. I know who I want us to have. I think I know what the Colts could do in that first round. I'm definitely cooking some things up, and we're going to be I'm going to have my last mock draft. My final mock draft is going to drop tomorrow, April 20th, 2024. Colts Syndicate final mock draft is going to be out. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Go watch that video when it comes out. If you're watching this and that video is already out, make sure you go see that one. All right. I appreciate you joining me for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.